Hey everybody, I'm really excited about today's episode. I talked with the incredible coach, entrepreneur, and facilitator Amanda Parker, and we had a really great conversation about building courage from within. With a remarkable career journey from New York City marketing to working with jaguars in Panama, and for clients such as the World Economic Forum, World Bank, Unicef, and General Assembly, Amanda's experience in organizational and individual transformation shines throughout our conversation as she shares her insights and challenges us to consider what might be on the other side of that resistance we feel, and leads us to a place where we find the courage to take the next right step forward. Without any further ado, here's my conversation with Amanda Parker. All right, welcome to the Building Thinkers podcast today. I'm so delighted to be joined by Amanda Parker. I think today we're going to dig into this idea of building courage from within and talking about fears and confidence and all the things that can get in the way of that and what if only people knew. And so, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I am really excited to be here. It's been a long road to get to this recording day, and I can't wait to share this conversation and see what comes up here.
Wonderful. Okay, you want to share any of our background? Now we have an extra layer of our background from our last couple of weeks, but anything you want to share with how we got connected?
Yeah, so originally we connected through a community that we're both a part of, which is the L&D Shakers community. So the wonderful Anna Maria Dorgo has started this incredible space for people who are really passionate and curious about learning and development can come together. So we found each other in that space. And then, of course, we had a trial run of our podcast episode where the technology just did not work and wasn't on our side. And now we finally get to come here today full of confidence that tech is going to be supporting us.
Yes. I think I shared with you a couple of the podcast episodes where we did have to go back and forth for whatever reason because of tech on either side have become some of my dearest friends. And so it's fun to be able to get to spend some time together working through things and saying, hey, this is not the week. Let's try another week. And so I'm excited to be here. And it's given me even more time to think about some of the concepts that I know we're going to really explore together. And one thing I love to start with understanding, what you build, hence Building Thinkers, and how you got there. And one thing that stood out to me when I was initially researching and going into your background is that you have several either former titles or former clients with the word world in it. So you've done some things with some people, World Economic Forum, World Wildlife Fund, lots of things with world. So you like to do big things, it seems. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey and what brought you into what you're doing today. However you want to get there, no right or wrong way.
Well, I love that call out on the word world because I don't think I would have ever pieced that together, but actually it really speaks to who I am and what matters to me as a person. So I'm a person who has lived in many countries, traveled to many countries. I really discovered at some point in the last, maybe 10 years or so that people are just people, no matter where you are. And from everywhere that I've lived in the struggles and challenges or the excitement or joy or love that you see just with humans across the globe, it's all the same. And it's really nice to have that call out about this world element because it's something that's always come very naturally to me to really think on a global scale, an international scale. And even in the entrepreneur world, when people talk about, I really want to start working with international people. And I'm just laughing. I'm like, what do you mean? We all are. So it's funny to, have a moment just to reflect on that. And where I am in my journey, what took me here, it doesn't look like a straight road, but it either feels like a straight road or I've really gotten my story down packed. So I started in the advertising world, quickly realized just after a few years that I didn't feel so connected to that work that I was doing and really wanted to figure out what it was that I was deeply passionate about that would make me excited to go to work every day. And so here I am at, I don't know, like 23, 24, and I started applying to all these different amazing organizations that work with animals. So it was like, I love my cats, I love nature, I love everything that, well, is not human. And how can I actually find my way to support this kind of work? And after a search and interviews and not having the right experience, I found an opportunity to volunteer with World Wildlife Fund in South America. So I moved from my wonderful New York City apartment to Asuncion, Paraguay, where I really started to learn what this conservation work was all about and the unbelievable talent and passion of the people I was working with. And I was really confident. This is it. I found my place. And through that experience, we worked on a funding proposal with the German Ministry of the Environment. We got the funding approved, and I moved to Berlin. So I went from Paraguay to Germany, which is not necessarily the most straightforward path, and supported this conservation work. And through all of that work, really found that everything we were doing, yes, we were supporting nature and animals, but it was really all about those relationships with your colleagues, with government officials or producers or indigenous communities, like groups of humans doing things together, everyone with their own either agenda or ambition or whatever it was. And I started to see those pieces of organizations and how they work together and who's leading these organizations. So the fascination, although my love of animals is like as present as ever, as my cat sits and watches me giving this interview, I really felt this calling to support people and figure out how to help leaders create environments that people are excited to show up to work every day. And it would be nice if that was really altruistic and for the betterment of society, but it was also because I was not happy at work. I really didn't like who was leading the organizations that I was in, and I felt I wasn't able to really grow. So a lot of this came from a sense of there has to be a better way to do this. And yeah, I was able to find my way. I had worked with a coach through a fellowship and asked her, like, can I work for you? Is there anything I can do in your company? And of course, had an interview process and I was vetted and all those, formal things. But I ended up working in a leadership consultancy for about a year. And I always consider that kind of a master's degree in leadership development. And that's where I was able to work with some of these big organizations like Unicef and World Bank Group that I might not have had that opportunity had I just gone out on my own straight from the beginning. And it also gave me the confidence really to start my own entrepreneurial journey, to really understand that it was possible for me to bring this vision of better leadership, better organizations, heart-centeredness into the world. And I started the Courage Factory 5 years ago with that mission and that dream.
Amanda, it's so incredible. I totally see the through line. I know you see the through line of just all the incredible ways that one thing kind of led to the next. One putting yourself out there and saying, can I work for you? And, going after the opportunities and each of those pieces. And I'm wondering, as you now think about all of that learning and now with the Courage Factory for the last 5 years, what is something that comes up again and again? Sometimes we think about it as, what do people overcomplicate when it comes to the work you do? If only people knew. That's my favorite part of the sentence stem. If only people knew when it comes to courage or leadership or wherever you want to go.
Well, it's really fascinating. I think that we have a concept that leadership is supposed to look a certain way. And when you start to dig in a bit deeper, you realize there's no universal definition of what a leader is. So people don't really know. They just have some idea in their mind of what a leader is and what it looks like, and they do their best to live up to that. And 9 times out of 10, it's not at all aligned with who they are. I remember years ago supporting a client who was new in a role, like a managing director, across like a pretty big region, working across Benelux, which is Belgium, Luxembourg, and France, and trying to figure out how he could be more of this, charismatic front of room leader. And he was a complete introvert. It just wasn't a natural place for him to play. And he had so many other strengths that he could really bring to the table that would make him an exceptional leader. So I think it's really fascinating to see that. I think really what that boils down to is that we're so often working towards a vision of what we believe is the right way forward, maybe based on what we've seen or heard or experienced. And most people don't really take the time to ask, what does that mean for me? So who do I want to be in this position? How do I want to show up? And I think it's something I learn all the time as well. Who do I want to be in my business? What kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of coach do I want to be? And most of us are sort of working on autopilot until you have that opportunity to just hit pause and really consider, what am I creating here? What's this experience for myself or for the people that I work with? So I think it's really, if only people realized that they have a choice in how they show up in their life and in their work, they would be more conscious and create something they really love that really aligns with who they are.
I love this. It's making me think about just some of those external pressures. What are the things and the challenges that cause us to respond in that way? To your point on this autopilot, that we just go and we respond to kind of the input we're receiving, either from what we're reading or feedback, instead of adding to that, perhaps like this starting place of going within and pausing to reflect. And I think in my own internal work, any of those times where I've done that pause and that reset, there's this piece that's playing, I think, in the back of my mind that's part of my very driven, striving productivity is I have to quiet the lie that I hear of this time somehow not being productive when I am pausing, and in fact recognizing that some of the most creative work, the most authentic work to me, comes after a period of that time of internal reflection and pausing, whether it's been working with a coach or therapist or just quietly in my own journal of mapping out what I want building thinkers to be. And one piece of it that was helpful for me was I was working with a coach. I wasn't quite sure. I was like at the 5-year plan, trying to figure out, what do I want this to look like in 5 years? And I was like, it feels blurry to get to that. And she's like, well, what if that blurriness is okay? And all you kind of need is the fog lights of what's right in front of you. And I was like, oh, and taking just the next steps and realizing now so much of that stuff is so much more clear from just that next step, and trusting that I do know who I am, that I do know the work that I've done. So I don't know if any of that resonates with what you've seen with your clients or in the work of the Courage Factory.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us have this experience of the world that things have to be hard and it has to be a struggle. And if it's not a struggle, is it even worth it? And believe me, I am guilty of this too. So I can speak about this eloquently because I've had this experience so many times. And the reality is that we all have our own gifts, our natural inclinations, the things that really excite us, that, we jump out of bed for in the morning. And somehow along the way, that became the stuff that we're not supposed to do. No. Don't do the things that are fun and come naturally to you. Do the things that are hard and get good at them. And I think that's really funny because I've seen this in my own life so many times that I'm pushing up a hill to achieve something that's really maybe not aligned with who I am. And I think it's great to strive and to be ambitious and try for new things. There's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, you just find that something is just too hard. And if you really hit that pause button, as you're saying, you'll figure out why, or you'll find another way forward, or you'll realize, oh God, this is not for me. Why am I doing this? I think that's happened to me a lot in a lot of the more corporate relationships that I've had, where I've been either employed or an affiliate, that I find, when I find myself in a situation where I'm not aligned with the overall vision of the organization, I start to feel like this uphill battle that I'm fighting just to get the work done every day. And I'm trying to pay attention to those triggers a bit more within myself, that I can recognize, does this actually feel good? Is this something I want to work for? Or maybe there's something else that my time could be more valuable spent doing.
Okay, this takes me to one of the book recommendations we'll get to in a little bit, but one of the ones you have on your list is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, which is one of my favorites. And I'm going to read a quote and I want to unpack it together. So he says, "We fear discovering that we are more than we think we are, more than our parents, children, teachers think we are. We fear that we actually possess the talent that our small voice tells us, that we actually have the guts, the perseverance, the capacity." What stands out to you about that when you think about what, again, either in the Courage Factory now or what your clients have brought to you or what you think about yourself? Why do we have this fear of discovering that it's counterintuitive? We have this fear of discovering that we can actually do what we want to do. Why is that such a wrestling?
Well, I see this a lot really in my own life, and definitely when I'm working with coaching clients. When you realize that you can actually achieve what you want to, and that you can actually create a life that you love, that you're happy in, it takes away all the excuses. It takes away all of your ability to say, oh, no, I can't do this because my partner relies on me, my boss needs me, the company will crumble without me, my team needs me. All these kind of excuses and barriers that we build up, and maybe they're well-meaning, they're meant to protect us, they help us feel solid and grounded because we know our place, it is clear, we know what we're supposed to do, we have our title, our place, and that's comfortable. And when you realize that you can, let's say, go for your dream, first of all, like, oh my God, that's very scary, to actually recognize that I'm the one that's in control of that, no one else. And it's usually a total gray zone. There is so much uncertainty. What does that look like? What does that mean? What am I supposed to do? And I think, as a coach, I am always selling clarity and confidence. You will get clarity and you will feel confident. The secret is those things are not true. It's not possible. You'll get clearer. You'll feel more confident, but you're never going to reach clarity and confidence. You're going to have to walk through, these zones of uncertainty for a long time and figure it out as you go. So that's what I'm reflecting on when I hear that quote. How about you?
Yeah, I think, something that you said made me think about, I'm going to go down a neuroscience path for a second, because I was thinking about how maybe a piece of this is the fact that our brain really likes homeostasis. It likes being in the same place and everything kind of settled and knowing, to your point, this is my title, this is my organization, this is the client that I've been working with for 7 years, this is the thing. And when anything, even good things, come to play that change that homeostasis, then our brain is saying, no, alert, high alert. Like, we're not sure about this because we don't know what it looks like on the other side. And so my understanding of this piece of neuroscience is that the brain would rather even have a wrong story, but that's clear, than to not know. And so it's why we make all sorts of crazy assumptions. Don't get me started on communication and working with other humans. We make up all these lies, right? That our brain thinks are true. So I think here a piece of it is recognizing that to do something new or to do something that is aligned with who we are might, while it shouldn't be hard, it might feel hard at the beginning when we don't yet know. And I think that's a piece of this fear is, okay, we actually do have what it takes, but now I have to go do the thing. Because to your point, there's no excuses left. I don't have to say, sit in any sort of maybe a victim mentality or something of people told me I couldn't do it, or nobody gave me an opportunity, or I've been sitting on the sidelines. It's like, no, actually you can. Let's go do this thing. And I think I've seen that a lot as I have expanded what I'm offering with Building Thinkers and expanded from a certain smaller set of clients to larger. I get to decide who I reach out to for the podcast. I get to decide what course I develop. And then it was like, oh, so I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to build the thing that I need, the thing I want to share. And then actually yesterday was the last day of launching the first prototype of the course I've been wanting to build that's been in my mind. And it's like, we actually did the thing, So then the resistance comes down. It becomes new resistance. Now what are you going to do with that thing? It doesn't stop, but it changes and evolves. And so I just see a lot of that play out, at least in my own psychology.
Yeah, I think it's that we're more supposed to get used to the unknowing, the discomfort of that, the uncertainty, because we all face it. It doesn't matter where you come from, how senior or junior you are in your work environment, what role you play in your family. We all face that uncertainty, and it is scary. And it's much easier to hold on to what we know. And I think that's also, well, just to back up for a second, yay and congrats, because you did the thing. And a lot of people are too scared. They're comfortable, and that does, in what I've seen with people I work with, that does lead a lot of people to feeling stuck because they want to stay in what they know. And the reality is we're never meant to stay there for too long. You're always supposed to grow and to learn and to try new things. And when you hold on too tightly, you prevent yourself from new opportunities that are coming. And honestly, that place of feeling stuck is really painful. It doesn't feel good. We think it will because it's safe. We know what it looks like, but it actually feels extremely painful when you're in it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that one of the things I've reflected on is the more times I do get to the other side and I didn't die, and I can tell my brain, see, we did it. And nobody pointed out the missing comma or whatever, because I have Grammarly and it's fine. Or whatever the thing is that I'm concerned about, in this last example, I was using a totally new tech stack to try out some things. And so it was actually literally my first time with people using that tech stack, but I also wanted to be trying the activities that were underneath that. So I was trying to let go of, the buttons over here instead of over there and this or that. And I don't know exactly what it looks like on the user end. But while being centered in thinking about, are the activities helping participants go from point A to B that I'm trying to get after here? And so there was a lot of release. And for me, I think the best way is always to go for it and try, and then listen to that feedback and see how that really grows. And I'm thinking about, that place. So the courage factory. And so the word courage. Well, maybe can I ask this? Why courage? We have been talking about confidence. We've also been talking about how it shouldn't necessarily be hard, but then also, why do people need courage to look within to find, you talk about finding the magic that's all around them. Maybe a little bit, I know we've kind of hit on this, but maybe a little bit more of why courage and why starting there.
So courage is something that many people are looking for. They want to find their way to courage. And I mean, this is just what comes up. I don't know if this is even going to directly answer your question, so we can come back to that. But what's fascinating is that we assume that, oh, I'm going to, work really hard and then I'll be courageous enough and then I can do the thing that I want to do. But courage only comes from taking action and doing it wrong and doing it badly and making mistakes and trying something out that you're scared to do and doing it anyway. And then you find like that courage is building, the confidence is building. I really relate those two things together because there is no right moment. There is no, perfect scenario. And in my own life, I've done a lot of courageous things, but they've usually come after such a long point of stuckness, of wanting a change and being afraid and being afraid and being afraid, and then finally saying, you know what, screw this, I am going for it. And so people on the outside are like, wow, you've done all these things. And I'm laughing because I'm like, it didn't feel courageous when I did that. It felt like I had no choice. There was no other way to move forward other than that thing, whatever that was. And when I created the business, it was fun. I remember sitting down and writing hundreds of names on paper and trying out all these variations and what am I trying to do and what does this look like, and coming to the Courage Factory and then tentatively, looking if the URL is available and all of this. And it's funny because the name was like a moment of inspiration and it was just, I knew it. It was perfect. And every single day since then, I've been leaning into it. So I'm always reminding myself, like it's a guidepost for me that to be courageous and just to remember that I am and that I can be. And actually what I always loved was I always had this image of the Courage Factory kind of being like literally like a factory that is churning out courage. Like people come in and then we are processing them into their most courageous selves. So that is an image that I still hold.
I think it's beautiful. And I think I see that in the work you do, first of all. And so I see so much alignment in reading through what you write, what you share, what you make videos about, what you create artifacts on, and just from also our conversations. I love this like guidepost for me, and what it's making me think about is how it seems to me that people that are so passionate about what they do and so clear-minded and focused in on it does come from that place of having to do it themselves. And in particular in this space of, human development, activating human potential and all of that. And so I love also this courage comes from action. It reminds me of Seth Godin talks about dancing with fear. And he says, essentially, it's not that you're not going to be afraid. It's that there is fear and you dance with it anyway. And knowing that, I think, is a signal for not waiting because you're afraid, but knowing that, again, that sign, that's back to the War of Art. It talks about resistance is that enemy within. And he talks about the rule of thumb in the War of Art. The more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel towards pursuing it. And the last time we connected when our tech was wonky, I was on the front side of launching this thing into the world. And I felt a lot of resistance. And that is gone now. There's new resistance, but that part's gone now because we got to that other side. But I think it's so fascinating that like there's this relationship of the more important it is to our evolution, the more the resistance is. Maybe this is back to that homeostasis. Our brain wants to stay here. So if we're going to do something that's going to push us way out of our comfort zone, we are getting that activation. And I think like anything else, just being able to notice and name that and to say, hey, everybody feels that. We are humans, and you aren't going to arrive at this magical place where you are always centered no matter what situation arises. However, we can do hard better. We can think about our responses, and when I feel anxious or when I feel nervous or whatever that is, go into my wisdom and say, what is that telling me? And that's from some therapy work, and then also emotional agility. I usually have a stack of books that I'm like, related to this podcast guest might be this book, and I have next to me Emotional Agility by Susan David, because she talks about how a lot of this homeostasis and how we choose to respond, and having, I love this idea of emotional agility doesn't mean that we're not going to experience emotions. And again, we're going to be perfectly only the emotions we consider to be positive, but how we use the ones that we might consider traditionally negative to be those guideposts. Those are some of the things that it's making me think about in this beautiful courage factory that you're building and creating these people that now can activate in the world.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to bring the emotions in, right? Because there are these parts of ourselves that we don't want to acknowledge or don't want to experience. And there are so many reasons for that, right? So how did your parents react when you got angry or upset? Or what did you learn that was okay or not okay in your childhood? I had one client who I was working with, this was probably a couple months ago now, and he had always learned it. He had a single mother who was raising him and his siblings, and he wasn't allowed to get angry. He wasn't allowed to raise his voice. It was bad. It could be dangerous, all these things. So here he is, a 40-something-year-old man who literally doesn't know how to express anger because he was always just taught not to. And I think it's so powerful to find ways to let that range of emotions come through. And I found, even for myself, because anger is something I struggle with, like I also prefer to just let things roll off, except they're not really rolling off. It's just building up. And I had a moment the other day, it was so inconsequential. I was having like a text conversation in a group chat, and someone, started making rules about what this chat was for. And everything just sparked inside. Like, what? You can't just make up rules as we go. You have to there's a culture here. You need to communicate it. And then I posted something and she deleted what I wrote. And this fire was going off inside of me. And it was really funny because in the past, I might have just been overtaken by that, and the rage would have disrupted my whole day, and I'd just be angry and want to give up, And in this moment, I could really sense my own growth because I sat there and I said, whoa, what's really happening here? Why is this incident, what's triggered here, And sit in that emotion. And I'm not saying that's easy to do, but in that moment, I was able to actually hit pause, put my phone away before I said things that I would regret, and just be like, okay, this is amazing. What am I angry about? I get to learn something new that's a trigger I didn't realize was there and move through it. So I know that sounds also quite idealistic, just be with your emotions. And that's hard for most of us to do. But for me, it was also a huge growth point that I could just be with that emotion that I'm not used to allowing myself to experience and just understand it and let it be there.
Yeah, it's that pause and the space between the input and our reaction to it. It's that space in which we have all the control that we don't really realize we have the control until we've done some of that work and that self-awareness. And so, yeah, that really resonates. I hear that. And I think this connects to one of the questions I wanted to ask, which is, I love diving into how we learn and how we grow and transform. We're both in the human activation space, human potential space. And so what is something that you used to not know how to do that you now know how to do? And then I'd love to unpack how you learned it.
So, there's so many things, so many things I didn't know how to do and still don't. I'd say the thing that has had the biggest impact on me especially over the last few years, like especially since starting my own business and going out on my own, has really been listening to my intuition and really getting a sense of what are my internal signals, what's the voice or the wisdom that I'm hearing, and how can I actually listen to it. And this has been, well, really difficult because my mind always knows better because I'm smart and I'm intellectual and I've read and I know the experts and I've done the work and let me handle this up here.
Same.
And it's just been really a journey of allowing myself to go within and find a quieter space to get the answers that I need. And actually that's a lot of what I do with people that I'm working with as well, is just helping them, like, just stop talking. Just stop talking. Close your eyes, breathe. What comes up? And it's remarkable how much wisdom we get from just literally tuning out the noise around us, closing your eyes, breathing deeply, and just your whole system can calm down and you can hear wisdom from within that you wouldn't have even thought of if you just keep trying to push forward. So intuition is one of the most important, I mean, I don't even know if I'd call it a skill, but listening to my intuition is a skill. And that is something that I really had to develop.
And what do you attribute that learning to? How did you learn to do that? Formal learning, mentorship, trial and error, a combination of all the things, playing with it and seeing.
Gosh, everything. So I think I really learned by not listening. I think I spent a good part of my life ignoring it. And that brought up all sorts of issues. So my intuition would speak very clearly when something was right or wrong, and then my mind would get in the way and say, no, we're still going to do it this way. And I think what happened for me, because I really believe our body is always speaking to us, I had to wait until I had physical symptoms of like skin conditions or anxiety or things that came to the surface in my face, like, you can't ignore me anymore. And that was really, horrible and powerful because, I stayed in a job that I was unhappy in for years beyond the time I knew I was unhappy. I stayed in a relationship I was unhappy in for years beyond when I knew I was happy, and didn't know how to walk away. I didn't know how to end it. I didn't know how to close something out in a healthy way. I had no idea. And so it was really, at some point, I remember this was about maybe 6-7 years ago, I broke out head to toe in this rash that just would not go away. And I went to like every dermatologist. I was living in Berlin at the time. I went to all these dermatologists and everyone had a different diagnosis, and it's psoriasis and it's eczema and you need these steroid creams and these pills, and literally tried everything. Nothing was working. And I had a colleague who I worked with who's still a good friend of mine, and she had been seeing this Ayurvedic doctor. I had no idea what Ayurveda was. And she had told me a few times, maybe you should go see her. Maybe you should, experience what this is like. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not into that. I don't believe in like herbal medicine or any of this. Like, please, no. And I was so desperate that one time I just said, yeah, okay, give me her number. I'm going. And I went into her clinic and told her what was going on. And she looked at me and she said, okay, it's not psoriasis. It's not eczema. It will clear up once we get your stress levels down. And she did, in Ayurveda, they do what's a pulse diagnosis, and they actually can feel and sense what's happening in the body with, decades of training and everything else, that they can really tell what's happening. And she gave me some herbal pills to work with. And I was really like, oh, okay. And she said, here's the thing. just whatever you believe, just tell yourself this is going to work. Every time you take these pills, just tell yourself this will work. And so I did, because at this point, I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. My skin cleared up within 2 weeks completely. And I had been fighting with this for a year. And it was really like, I have goosebumps everywhere now. It was such a powerful moment of realizing, how long have I been unhappy in this relationship? How long have I been unhappy in my job? How long have these messages been trying to come through and I'm ignoring it until it's literally unavoidable? And I have to say, even today, I'll still get a sign. If my anxiety is too high, I'm under too much pressure, I'll notice like a bump or a mark. And it won't have been there a week before, and all of a sudden it's there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's time to like hit pause, see what's going on, and figure out what's my intuition trying to tell me. So luckily I've gotten a bit better by now. I don't need to have this full-blown reaction, but I still am starting to learn the ways that my body and the inner voice, the inner wisdom within speak to me so that I can listen when it comes and not when it's, a point of desperation.
Wow, that's incredible. It's making me think that perhaps is this what has drawn you to, is it Don't Step on Bluebonnets, the podcast that you're going to be, Bluebells, Bluebonnets. Bluebell. Yep. We're here in Texas. Don't Step on the Bluebells, your upcoming podcast. And my understanding is you'll be talking with healers. Is that journey that you just shared of healing one of the things that drew you into wanting to talk more in that space?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't think I would have said that at the time. I still wasn't ready. So this worked, and I thought, great, herbal pills are the answer. It wasn't that I was like, oh my God, I need to get in touch with my spirit guides and everything is going to go well. So it took many years. And I would say over the last really 5 years, it's coincided a lot with my entrepreneurial journey that I started to have experiences of really powerful healers and healing in places I never expected it. And I went from a place of leaving behind, like when I left WWF, that was an incredibly difficult moment for me because it was so much a part of my identity. And then I was in this next job and it was super stressful and all these things. And by the time I'm starting my business, I didn't really know what I wanted. I just knew I wanted to do it better than everyone else. And I was going to figure it out. And actually in the coach training that I did, so I trained with Coactive. I went to Singapore to do the training, which is not necessarily what you would associate, but I wanted to go to Southeast Asia and they offered the training I wanted to do in Singapore. And I said, okay, cool. So I went to Singapore for about 3 months and did this training. And part of that training was really like activating your intuition. And the way that they had us do it was sitting in, an activity and just blurting out whatever you thought, whatever you felt with the person who you were sitting with. And it was crazy. I mean, the things that came out that I didn't know who this person was, and I would just say something and it would be right, or it would be the exact message that they needed to hear. And I started to really want to go deeper there because I realized, okay, this is what intuition is. I haven't been paying attention to this. What else is there? And at that same time, I in that trip to Asia, because I spent about 7 months in Asia, kind of building the business, escaping life, meeting new people, etc. And I did training. So I became a Reiki healer. I did Reiki level 1 for anyone who knows what that means. And it was the first experience of like actually feeling energy in my hands and in my body. And I would not have believed it, and I wouldn't have known about it or understood anything about this if I had not had this experience myself. So over the last 5 years, I have deepened my connection to Reiki, to energy healing, and just started working with incredible healers and people who are facilitating transformation in the world. And most people don't even know that there's so many different ways that you can actually heal and feel good. And my goal with Don't Step on the Bluebells is to really open that door of how much possibility there is in healing and transformation. And I'm going to be interviewing just the most incredible healers that I know and that I've met, and just listen to their stories, what they do, the transformations that they've seen in others, and also get a sense of what their journey has been to get there. Because I think there's this preconception that you're born with it, or you have this connection, or you don't. And everyone's story is different. Everyone's journey is different. And you don't have to believe everything. You don't have to believe in everything. But just to know this is out there in the world, and it's a possibility. It's a choice. It's something that you can engage with. And it all stems from that place of not knowing where to find those answers myself. So as I was going through my own journey, I'm still going through my own journey of healing and transformation and personal growth, and searching, like, what is energy healing? What is this? Like, not really finding a place that I could get deeper wisdom and understanding of what this whole world of healing is really about.
I can't wait to hear the episodes from that. We'll make sure to put that in our episode description, and so excited to see that journey. Let's go. I could talk with you for all day, of course, and go deep into all of these amazing topics. But let's go to any of your book recommendations, any podcast recommendations, and where people can find you. So we'll start with books.
Books. Well, you've already listed my favorite. I would say that The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield has been one of the most influential books in my life. I come back to it and read it all the time. I also recommend The Untethered Soul. So many people have already read this book. I actually have it somewhere right here on my shelf. It's just a really powerful book about going within, quieting that voice that's always chatting away to us, and listening to what wants to come forward from there. And that's a book I had to read a few times to really connect and understand. So it's a door opener, I would say. Another book that I really love is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Sorry for the word. You Are a Bad A. That is the title of the book. And that is a really powerful book about, like, self-growth, personal growth, self-discovery. And she has just such a kind of lighthearted, gritty way of talking about what so many people make so serious. Or she just has such funny humor, and how she got to this place where she figured out how to really access her inner, confidence. I don't know what other word to say. Confidence. Great. That's a good word. One other book, and this is something that just came to my attention recently, so it's not like a long-term favorite, is this Living a Committed Life by Lynn Twist. And she, I find, you'll hear when I give the podcast recommendations, I mean, she is a woman who has made it her mission to just commit and go all in on what it is that she's doing in the world. And the difference that makes when you're sort of half in, half out, you're not really sure what you're building, versus really, truly, deeply committing to what you're doing and watching how the path unfolds. And that is just such a powerful message to really lean into. So for the podcast episodes, should I dive in?
Yes.
This is a podcast that I listened to recently. So Marie Forleo, some people may know her. She's basically a marketing, business building guru. You know, she's someone that really helps inspire people to lean into their own unique gifts and bring that into the world. And she has a podcast, and there are so many episodes, but actually the episode that was recorded recently with Lynn Twist was absolutely mind-blowing. And hearing Lynn's story of how she came to this idea of commitment and her journey is really remarkable. So I highly recommend having a listen if you want to be inspired and want to, find a bit more courage on the path that you're on. Another recommendation, and this is a friend of mine who started this podcast called How to Live. So that's by Sharad Lal. And he started this podcast really with the intention and desire to help people just consider how to live a good life. And so he's interviewing people from all walks of life, business leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, creators, and just understanding from them, what does it mean to actually live a good life and to live well? And he's a super successful entrepreneur who's, started businesses and everything. So I really appreciate that he dives really deep into this life and personal side of things. And then one other person who I've been following for the last year or two is Chris Do. And he has a business called The Future. So he's a designer, an award-winning graphic designer. And he went all in on himself, making these educational videos to help other designers build up their businesses. And it has turned into, honestly, it feels like a movement. He really shares super pragmatic, accessible, makes you feel good about yourself because you can actually do it, wisdom and advice when running a business. He focuses on creators, but it really translates across. So that is what is in my world and on my purview.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited about that entire list. I am add to cart, add to bookmarks, so many things and just one theme that kind of stood out to me from all of that is this idea. So you said it different ways, going all in on yourself, the committed life. And it connects to me to Greg McCowan's Essentialism, his book, and just this idea that if you imagine arrows going in all different directions, all of the different ways that we're pulled by input, and you should do this. And we talked early on about the culture around us and expectations from parents or different places, right? Or expectations we put on ourselves. If we think about those as arrows going all the different directions, but then the arrows starting to align to that clarity and vision. And for example, how you just talked about, he went all in on these videos specifically for this group, right? And we know the power of a niche. And I fought the niche forever because I was like, I don't need a niche. I want to do all these different things. And that turns out you need a niche. And because of this, right? The focus and the power. And yes, you can do a variety of things, but when you have that clarity of purpose and focus, how much it quiets the noise, lets you do the thing and help the people you were intended to help. And I just hear that throughout our conversation and in those beautiful recommendations that you shared. So I want to make sure people know where to find you and your incredible work. And will you also talk about the download that we'll put the link for our listeners to the habit tool thingy?
Yes. So I have a gift for you all, and I'm really excited to share this. It's called Habit Hero, and it's a tool that's really going to help you understand from the most basic proponent of what does it mean to have habits or rituals that support you in your life. And every time you're trying to do something new or grow or change, it starts with the simplest step forward. And this tool really helps you to identify, okay, what is that thing that if I can really commit to doing this for, let's say, the next 21 days, because there's a tracker in there, if I can really commit to doing this for 21 days, what impact is that going to have on my life? And there's a lot of really powerful questions in there, self-discovery questions and coaching questions, I like to say, that help you take that experience a bit deeper. So you can find that at amandaparker.co/thinkers. You can also find me at amandaparker.co or couragefactory.com. So I have the two businesses that are running, and you can find me on Instagram at amandaparker.co. I would love to hear from you, anything that you're, taking away from this conversation or just want to share. So please don't be shy.
Wonderful. Okay, I will put all of those links. Thank you so much for the gift. And just, it's It's one of those other, I know the universe aligned for all of this because it is so connected to the work that I'm trying to do about unlimited building a modern learning habit. So we focus specifically in that learning experience about how do we take the power of habit specific to what we want to learn and narrowing that piece down. And so I'm so excited for our listeners to get to use that and connect with you. Amanda, your wisdom, your intuition, your graciousness, I just can't really say enough about that. It's so centering to just be with you in this space, even though we're across the oceans. And so thank you for that. I can tell, you're so passionate about the work that you do. Your clients are so lucky to have you. And I'm just excited we can stay connected on our entrepreneur journey. Thanks so much for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a podcast rating and review. That helps more listeners find us in the world of podcasting algorithms. You can find out more about my learning and development strategy services at buildingthinkers.com. And remember, there's no limit to what you can learn.